Hey everyone, Samantha here. Welcome to our 10th live episode of Trans IRL. It's hard to believe we've already filmed 10 episodes, but I'm thrilled by the stories we've had a chance to tell you, and I'm really excited for the stories that are yet to come. If you're new to our show, I want to remind you that our previous episodes are all available on our YouTube page, where you can also be notified whenever we are live. In addition, we also have our presence on Instagram at TransIRL, which is the best way to submit show ideas to us and to send guest questions our direction as well. And you'll also be notified of our show schedule and any bonus content that we put out. Finally, our Facebook page at TransIRL Show on Facebook is now simulcasting our live videos. And if you'd like us over there, we'd appreciate us quite a bit. All this magic originates from the Trans IRL control room in Santa Monica, California. So there's Addison over there. And she is going to keep things running smoothly for us tonight. She is going to be watching the live chats, and she'll be back a little bit later on to make sure that any questions that you may have are directed towards tonight's guest. So on to tonight's guest. I first heard about her before I started my own transition. I actually caught an interview she did that was featured on CNN's website, and I was drawn to the story. At that point, I was really already struggling with my own gender identity. And then here was the story of an amazing individual who had come to terms with her own identity and seemingly a much more difficult situation than the one I was facing. So I was drawn to her strength and conviction, even in the face of the community that she was born into, and drew strength from that. I'm incredibly honored that she's joining us here tonight. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Abby Stein to the show. Hello, Abby.
Hi, Samantha. How are you? I'm really excited to be here. I'm not sure, is the frame okay? I can never tell. Are we good?
You look great. You're good.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much for having me. I have to say, I've been looking now, you were showing the Great Big Story video, the one from CNN, and I haven't seen that in a while. It's like a long time ago. It's really interesting to me to see it.
It's incredible to see how you progress in your own transition, isn't it?
I'm looking at it and I'm not even sure it's me. I look so different, yeah.
So let's get started here. I did want to start with just some background about your story. Not all of our viewers know all your history. So can you give us a little bit of background about the community that you grew up in?
Hold on. If they don't know it, they should just Google it.
They will Google it.
If you don't know anything about my life, just Google it. Come on. But that's a joke. Yeah, let me give you a basic. So first we were talking about tonight. So I just want to say, to me, it's brave in the middle of the day. It's currently 1:48 p.m. on Friday here in Sydney, Australia, where I'm calling in from. And so sorry if the connection is a bit off. We're literally coming from the other end of the world. So I'm Abby, as you can all tell. To give a very brief description of my life, I grew up in what's called the ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jewish community. I know these are a lot of names, but it's what it is. I'm in New York City, in Brooklyn, kind of geographically. I always joke that culturally I grew up more in the 18th century Eastern Europe, or more exactly, I think what I call a pretend 18th century Eastern Europe. Which is kind of the way and the style the Hasidic community lives. I grew up in a very sheltered community, extremely segregated from the outside world. They have their own culture with no access to internet, at least officially, and movies, radio, TV shows. Pretty much any kind of form of like magazine or newspaper from the outside world is forbidden, and so on. In terms of LGBTQ issues, I think when I was growing up, as opposed to many communities out there that I think are very transphobic, the Hasidic community is, ironically at that point, simply ignored the transgender community. I felt and identified as a girl since I remember myself, but I had no words for it. I learned the first time of the word transgender when I was 20, and that's also when I learned that there's other trans people out there. The community is so sheltered that just engaging with gender sexuality is something they prefer not to do. So that is very much where I grew up. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Great.
Samantha?
No, that's a great start there. I do want to talk about the community a little bit more because it sounds like, and I'm not super familiar with the ultra-Orthodox community. What were those gender roles like growing up for men and women in the community? I think that's important to share.
What is that? Did you ask about women?
About
Amanda,
gender roles
did you ask about women?
in the community.
What are women? I don't know what you're talking about. That is the place of women in the Hasidic community. It's like the best way to describe it. In the public sphere, I mean, of course, they are women, and of course, women have their own community and their own leaders, maybe internally. But in the sense of the community stage, women are not part of that. Women are not part of the leadership, and it's not even a fight. I think there's a lot of religious communities, both Jewish and non-Jewish communities, where there's constantly a debate wherever you can ordain women, whenever a woman can be in leadership, and so on. In the Hasidic community, the leadership is entirely up to men. If you watch pretty much any big community gathering, it's almost always focused on the men. It's extreme gender segregation. I'm talking gender segregation as much as possible. Boys and girls, or to be more exact, people socialized as boys and girls have no relationship with each other growing up whatsoever, besides immediate family. Other than that, you're not even, forget about having sex or any like general sexuality or relationships. You're not even supposed to talk to the people who are being raised in the opposite gender. And I think that is very much the place. And then it's also a relatively, I mean, a lot of apologists for the community will come up with different reasons and say they're not sexist and women just have a different place, but it's the same kind of idea that we hear from a lot of like conservative places where, oh no, women have their own things to do. Women just have to be in the kitchen and have kids because dad's their place in life. So there's no choice really for anyone. There's a very rigid lifestyle for everyone, but specifically for women, they're supposed to have a lot of kids. Birth control, for if there's no exact medical reason, is usually not allowed, and women are expected to be housewives. That is very much a place of women, and the same thing, and again, as I've said, in community, women are totally second class. Again, there will be a lot of people in the community who might maybe object to that a bit, but in reality, that is what's going on.
So for you, growing up, originally you were on the track to become a rabbi, and you became a rabbi.
Kind of. I did the exams. Yeah, I never worked actually as a rabbi, but yeah, I did the ordination, got the letter, got the the plaque. Yeah.
So what led you then? You know, at the age of 20, you discover what being transgender is. What led you away from the Hasidic community?
My exploration on that ended up leading me what we call off the path, literally. That ended up leading me away from the Hasidic community. It's interesting because it started when I was 12, and it was definitely triggered. I think I remember thinking at some point that everyone is telling me that I'm a boy. I know for a fact that I'm a girl. Then what is telling me that everything else that I'm being told in the community, such as everything about God and about religion and what we have to do in life, what makes me think that these things are accurate? So they're kind of a jumpstart, what made me question in the beginning. But ultimately, by the time I was 20, so just going online was a big deal because we weren't supposed to do that. And for me, that was only a last resort when I very much felt like I don't fit into this community and I need to look for other options. But that was a lot coming from mostly a religious and philosophical and theological point of view rather than gender, which means obviously my gender identity was there the whole time, but I also got to a point where I didn't believe in the lifestyle and in the dogma or in the belief system of the Hasidic community. So that was like kind of a slow process that like started when I was already 12, and I was 15. I got into Jewish mysticism, which kind of helped me for a bit find my place. Jewish mysticism was also very interesting to me because gender is actually a bit more fluid. The link is available online. I put together a lot of resources where it's very interesting to see texts that are religious texts, but also just texts in the 16th century that say stuff like sometimes a male will be in a female body and a female will be in a male body, and so on. But that kept me in the community for a bit. But ultimately, when I was 20, I got to a point where that didn't work for me anymore, and I felt like I've lost. I can't stay religious. And I think in general, it's really hard to stay in a community where it's not just a culture, it's every step in your life, every day from the day you were born, and every moment in your life is restricted and follows very specific rules, which might be okay if you believe in that, but the day you stop believing in that and you don't think you have to do that, it's really hard to stick to that. So that is what led me, when I was on training, as I've said, when I got online for the first time, to then slowly look up communities that can help and support people who are leaving, and then I slowly ended up, I stopped being observant in January of 2012, we'll forget that, and then I finally left the community partially in 2013 and then fully in 2014 when I started school and moved out of my parents' house.
So let's talk about that at a high level anyway. You know, how has your relationship been with your family and with the community since coming out and since leaving the Hasidic community as well?
So, yeah, when I left the Hasidic community, I lost, obviously, and the Hasidic community is a very rigid lifestyle. There's no in between. The second you are not fully part of the community, you're out. And I didn't mind it. Like, by the time I left, I wanted to leave. And yes, I lost some of my friends, which was hard in the beginning, but I made some amazing new friends in the last 7 years, which I'm really proud of. My family stayed in touch with me when I left the community, which was in 2012, all the way until I came out, which was in 2015. And it's very interesting to me because years ago, I think even 10 years ago, people who left the Hasidic community were shunned. They were excommunicated, and a lot of times the family stopped talking to them. But as time passed on and more people left, there were more and more families who would continue to talk with their kids, continue to talk with their family members who have left the Hasidic community. However, when I came out as transgender, I was literally the first person who grew up Hasidic in history. So Hasidic Judaism started 250 years ago or more. The history of the movement, I was the first person to come out publicly. I mean, there's obviously been people before, there were people in the closet, there are people that I know have been in the closet for years, but I was the first person to come out publicly, and that to my family was a deal breaker. However, the reason I'm saying that also because I think that looking on how the community has slowly become, I don't accept them because they still don't accept people who leave the community, but it's a bit less rigid. It's a bit more that people who leave the community can be part of their own families and so on. So I think that shows, and that happened because there's more awareness, because more people have been leaving, and that helps for parents and for people in the community to deal with it better. And I think that gives me hope a lot for the trans community, for our community, because the more people come out, the more people know about it. Until I came out, just like me, most people in the community didn't even know the term transgender, didn't even know that we exist. And now that has changed. I used to joke when I started my transition that the day the Hasidic community becomes transphobic, the day they start hating transgender people, that would be, in a twisted way, that would be an accomplishment, because that would mean to recognize that we exist. And thankfully now I've accomplished that. They demonize me, I'm evil, I'm mentally ill, I'm a criminal, and any title, negative title that you can think of, I've been named, but they talk about it. There's awareness. I know that if there's a 12-year-old child in the Hasidic community currently struggling, they know that there's hope, they know that there are people like them, and they know that there's something that they could eventually do if they decide that this is what works for them best.
Where do your beliefs fall today?
Sorry. Say that.
Oh, I said, where do your beliefs fall today?
Say that again. Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear you. You mean religiously? That's very interesting, actually. I wouldn't call myself religious. I'm very proudly Jewish, and culturally and to some extent spiritually. I see religion. I had a rabbi, a teacher, who used to say that, a very progressive one, and he used to say that Jewish law has a vote, not a veto, which is that it's inspiring to look what people have done for hundreds and thousands of years, although it constantly shifted. There's nothing religion that stayed the same over centuries. But to me, it's like I look on Judaism as something that gives me a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of things that I like and enjoy from when I grew up, whatever it's food or music or holidays and the way we celebrate a lot of things. And I think they are still messages in Judaism, messages that I grew up with that are beautiful, messages that I can use to celebrate myself, celebrate my lifestyle, but also celebrate my identity. I had a bar when I was 13, which is fairly common, but I also did a bat mitzvah. After I came out about 3 years ago, I did a full celebration. And kind of what that showed me is that it's not that being queer and Jewish don't have to be a contradiction. I can use these two parts of my identity to enrich each other. I can look at my culture and be like, yes, there are parts that I think are outdated and they don't work for me, and I let go of them. But then I have other parts, and this is beautiful. The way that we can have a celebration of how to do a name change is beautiful. I can use that to not just accept my own gender identity and everyone else, to show people that we can celebrate that. And that has been something that's really important to me. We have to go beyond just tolerating people. I think we talk a lot about tolerance in the LGBTQ community, and I say always that tolerance is for lactose, or nuts. Some people tolerate lactose, some people don't tolerate lactose. Tolerance is not meant for people. People we are supposed to celebrate. We've got to rejoice with people. And I think while there are some people who want to use Judaism to oppress and to be against the LGBTQ community, we can use that to embrace each other, to embrace our communities, and to rejoice with it, to bring it and to celebrate our identities, because, heck, I think it's beautiful. It's not just that being LGBTQ, being queer, being trans is okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of our identities. And being able to celebrate that is a big part of what I have managed to find within Judaism way to do that. I think ultimately my philosophy when it comes to religion is a lot that people got to do what works for them. I don't believe in any form of us telling other people what to do. And I always say that I would be the last person to try to get people to be religious or be involved in the religious community. If they feel like this doesn't work for them, then this doesn't work for them. However, I think it's important for people who do want to stay involved with their cultural or religious communities to know that that is a possibility. There is an organization and a website online called Transfaith. It's transfaith.org. Which is really amazing, coming from all different backgrounds, including humanism and atheism, for people to know that whatever their religious or communal and cultural identity or belonging, where they feel they fit in is, it's not just that is okay with their LGBTQ identity, it is that it goes beautifully with their LGBTQ identity. And again, people are sometimes going to claim that it doesn't, but don't listen to them. Listen to me. I'm telling you that it's fine.
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, and I'm glad you shared your story like that. There's people who are watching right now. There are people that will catch this clip in the future who are dealing with their own internal struggles, their own identity, and their faith. And those people also have to deal with other individuals that are, pushing back on them and telling them that, in this faith, in this belief structure, you can't be trans and faithful. What would you say to somebody dealing with a situation like that?
I think the most important thing to know is, first of all, don't listen to them. Which is another conversation. I like to quote Taylor Swift, haters gonna hate, haters gonna hate, which is like, sometimes don't listen to them. Some people are just gonna use hate to justify, they're gonna use any excuse they can find. They've used religion to justify their own hate. Don't listen to them. But more logistically, there's so many communities. You can reach out. You can try reaching out to me. I know I'm busy a lot. I think, Samantha, you've seen that. I've been trying to make this happen. And I've been traveling. I was in Texas last week. I'm in Australia now. But you can try reaching out to me. I can try to give you some resources, or reach out to anyone. Reach out to Transfaith. Reach out to whatever your religious community is, you can find. I personally know transgender rabbis, priests and ministers, and transgender members of the Muslim community, of the Buddhist community, of pretty much every religious and cultural community. Sometimes, unfortunately, it might not be the community where you grew up in, but know that there are other people out there who will help you accept it yourself and accept your identity, your community, but also help you find a joy in it, help you find a celebration in it. And I want to say one thing, it's not easy. I mean, yes, I'm sitting here and I might look all timed up and I might look all amazing, and I'm really happy where I am right now, but it wasn't easy. It's not always easy. I'd be lying if I say it's easy. And even within your cultural, religious, or a tradition, whatever that is, it's not always going to be easy, but it's important to know that it's possible. I think the saying that we have in our community, it gets better, is not just a cheesy saying. It's accurate, because it does get better. It's possible. You can do it.
All right. We do have some questions that have been submitted from our audience, so I'd like to get to some of those now. First question is right here. Do you think that sections of the Bible that are used as justification against being transgender or gay are misinterpreted or mistranslated?
Here's the thing. First of all, I'm not aware of any biblical verses that talk about against transgender, which is interesting because when I look on it from putting up my rabbinic hat and purely looking on Orthodox Jewish law, transgender is actually a lot easier to work with than being gay. Because there's only one verse that prohibits cross-dressing, which I don't think refers to transgender people as a whole, because we are not cross-dressing. But also even that is very clear, both in Judaism and in Christianity, explained to only mean when you cross-dress because you want to commit fraud. I'm not going to go into that. I have a whole source sheet online that goes into these details. Now, here's the thing. Is it misinterpreted? Sometimes. I know, for example, the very famous verse from Leviticus where people say, "A man shall not lie with a man." People tend to skip one other part of the verse, which is, "A man shall not lie with a man the way he lies with a woman." And that part really seems to quantify that. In other words, gay sex is not always forbidden, only when you do it the same way that you do with a woman, and that is disputed, and every interpretation what exactly that means. I like to joke and say that the only thing that's very clear from that verse is that it is some form of gay sex that's totally okay. And obviously there's different ways of looking at it religiously or whatever, like academically. There's a lot of academics who believe that the Bible is a combination of different writers, and at least one of them was actually totally fine with gay sex. I'm not going to go into all of these details. I definitely think that if someone wants to use religion, they could look on these verses and be like, hey, this is what is against you. However, just like with everything else, we used to have a saying growing up: don't hate someone because they sin differently than you. Every religion and every community has found their own ways of dealing with outdated texts, in dealing with texts that don't seem to fit in. And I think even I strongly believe that the people who wrote the Bible were talking a lot about the cultural context of that time, and whatever you believe it was God or wherever you believe it was people, and not for something to never change and never evolve. Here's the other part. Regardless of that, even if you believe 100% that your religious experience, your religious beliefs don't let you, that your Bible, that your God, whoever that is, and whatever that, I don't believe in that kind of God who's a boogeyman in the sky. That's not something I believe in. And to some extent, when it comes to that kind of philosophical conversation, I could totally be an atheist sometimes. But that's not the point. Even if you do, religion has throughout history been able, the only religion that have survived is the ones who have been able to accept people and to celebrate people. We can choose to use our religion to hate people, or we can choose to use our religion to focus on the positive parts, to focus on the parts of that tell us that, for example, in Judaism, there's a law that says that a human life comes before anything, and for the sake of saving a human life, you are allowed to disregard pretty much in every other than three main commandments. You're allowed to disregard everything else. I know a lot of transgender people who can't live the other way. A lot of gay people who can't live the other way. At least from the way we look on the Bible, this means that you gotta live, and you being able to live is more important than anything, and so on. We could do that. I could use the next 3 hours to dissect every religion and try and find ways to show that it's totally fine, but I don't want to do that, because that isn't the point. The point is that if you want to be welcoming, you want to accept people, you can find that and do that even from the confines of your religion. You want to hate? I can't really help you there, but please don't use your religion for it. It's like, let's put it this way: if you want me to talk against God, I can give you a long list of things of what's wrong with God. But don't blame your homophobia, your transphobia on a God. It's you, okay? We can have, and if you really think it's your religion, reach out to me.
You're going to have a lot of messages after this one,
transgender, queer rabbis, Christians. Well, I'm sure. I will try to answer, but there's a lot online. I'm going to say again, translate.org. Check that out. There's another website called transtorah.org, which is mostly for Judaism. It's Torah, TORAH.org or .com. I don't remember, but either way, check that out. You can find my website.
We'll get all the websites up at the end here, and we'll put them up on the we'll put them up on the video link so people can find those websites as well.
Beautiful. Okay.
And I do want to go to the next question here from the audience. How do you reconcile the idea of the body being made in the image of God with transitioning?
I don't think there's anything to reconcile. It's beautiful. My body's being made in the image of God, but first of all, I mean, from a religious point of view, it's more a metaphor than seriously. But in the image of God, exactly. And would you ever tell for someone, if someone is born with a heart failure, would you tell them, hey, your body is born in the image of God, you're not allowed to correct that? I don't think there's anything wrong. We're not born in the wrong bodies. We simply fix it a bit, just like anyone else who was born with I don't want to say the disease, but people are born with actually anything. I don't have to give details. So many people are born with ways that no one disagrees that you are allowed to do to seek medical help to help you get over a problem. This is what it is. We're not saying God. Even again, I don't think we need religious justification or God justification to accept it, but we are talking here about transgender and religion. So from a religious point of view, you're not saying that God made a mistake. God made us perfect. Put it in ourselves, a girl, and sometimes the body is not perfect. It's like there's some people who are born with I don't know, a split cliff. I don't know how that's called, like some visual thing that doesn't look nice. People fix that, and no one is saying, hey, God doesn't make mistakes. It's not a mistake. Some people sometimes, and if you want to talk religion, we don't always understand why. Some people sometimes have to go through more medical help to be who they were intended to be. Let's put it this way. I don't think God, whoever that is, wherever God or Christ or Allah or Buddha, whatever you want to call the divine intervention in the world, I think they ever intended me to be a boy. And me being a girl is not like, oh, made a mistake, I'm going to change it. It's like, you made who I am, and I'm just going to make sure that I feel more comfortable. And again, if you want to talk religion, the science that the divine has given us a way of being able to do that. Does that answer the question?
Perfect answer. So let's take a look at our next question here. If your current religion has leadership that's against recognizing transgender identities, is it better to work to change that understanding or move to another faith?
It's hard to give a blanket answer to this. I think there are some communities where you can work within the community, and sometimes when you have to leave. So, for example, for me, in the Hasidic community, I wish I could say that there's a way to work internally. There isn't. There's no way. I don't know how to say it. You simply cannot be transgender, be Hasidic. It's almost impossible. I mean, you can't transition. It's almost impossible, unfortunately. However, let's say Orthodox Judaism, I'm using as an example. Or I know people I've worked with who grew up Mormon. These are both communities that are accepting or welcoming, but I already see the change happening. If you feel that you can do it, and again, a lot of people just feel that they have to leave and it's healthier for them, then you should do that. And again, there's so many, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's so many communities that are supportive, that will continue to support you, that will give you both emotional and logistical support on how to practice your own faith or your culture or your identity, whatever that is. However, if you think you can do that within the community, that's amazing. I know in New York City, there's an organization called Eshel that is working to support LGBTQ community within Orthodox Judaism. Really hard, and they're fighting a battle against the community leadership, but they're accomplishing a lot. And I sometimes think that the people who do that are amazing people who choose to stay in the community and fight from internally. If that's what you want to do and you think you can actually accomplish something, but very importantly, you got to make sure that it's not going to burn you out emotionally and physically. But if you think you can do that, then power to you. That's amazing and that is important. And there's certain change that can only come from the inside. I know I'm trying to do some change in the community that I grew up in, and I can do a lot by raising awareness, but I wouldn't be able to do any logistical change from the outside, but there was no option. If that's what you think you can do, then go for it. You go, girl, or boy, or anything in between, or nothing, whatever you feel like.
And I think it's a very volatile conversation right now. There are a lot of churches out there that are looking closer at being inclusive to transgender identities. I know that, personally for myself, I've worked with churches here in my local area that are trying to work on being more inclusive. Here's a picture of me at a local United Church of Christ service where they were voting as a congregation to make sure that their charter was trans inclusive. And they actually reached out not only to myself, but other people in the trans community here in Phoenix to come to the church, speak to the church, share our stories. And they voted unanimously to update their charter as a church to be inclusive of trans individuals. So there is goodness happening out there. There are people that want to hear. I know that recently there's been sort of mixed news out there with the latest happenings with the Methodist Church, which seems more like a step backwards, but there are many churches that are open and are inclusive to those with trans or queer identities. So I think that when people are willing to listen, there's a chance to speak.
Yeah, and I think the same actually in the Jewish community. The vast majority of synagogues today are supportive and welcoming. I've spoken at over 100 synagogues in the last while, and I think we're accomplishing a lot. And that is very important. I mentioned Phoenix. I'm actually going to be in Phoenix next year, and not next year, in September also. So I'm hoping to have a talk at a Jewish community there as well, and hopefully some other communities.
I'll make sure to swing by and say hi in person, okay? All right. I think we've got one last question here from the audience. How do you come out to parents who are usually accepting but belong to a faith that is not inclusive to trans identities?
That is an intense one. First of all, I have to object to belong to a faith because I think there's more community within a faith, but every faith, as you mentioned before, has communities that are welcoming. It's hard, and I think if the parents are usually accepting, that's a really good start. Because if the parents are open to talk, then they will do whatever they can to make it happen. I want to share. I was in Salt Lake City in 2017, and I met with an amazing group called Mama Dragons, and they are a group of mothers of LGBT kids in the Mormon Church. And they have been doing amazing work trying to raise awareness and to help LGBTQ people in Mormonism, which is one of the most conservative groups and one of the most anti-LGBT groups that they are out there. So I think that is a first step. Now, to go from there, sometimes, specifically if the parents want to be supported, just want to make sure that it's okay with their faith, I think finding a rabbi, a minister, a priest, an imam, whatever that is, that supports LGBTQ people, which, as I've said, they exist in every religion. That might sometimes help put them in touch with the community. I know that the organization that I mentioned before, Eshel, that works with Orthodox Jews in New York City, actually has specifically a group for parents to help them make sense of it. And I think when parents want to work, there's a lot of resources, thankfully, out there that could help them. So I think it's good that they want to work. It's important to listen to them. It's important to talk with them, again, if they actually want to work with you, and reach out to resources to people in your community, in your faith, and you can find it online. Again, as I've said, Trans Faith and other resources that exist online. You can find a leader in your community, not necessarily your community, your faith, that is supportive, and sometimes a lot of them would be happy to get in touch with parents and so on. And in my experience, that could be really helpful.
All right. I think that's all the questions we had loaded up here. I want to bring Addison on with us here and just check with her and see how the chats are looking here tonight.
Yeah, there were a few questions in the chat, but it was mostly stuff that we already covered. So I'm just going to toss it back to you guys.
Oh, we hit most of it?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful.
Abby,
I know you've had such a busy day.
Yeah. I would love to stay on, but I really have to go. As I told you, I have a hard deadline at 2:30 p.m. on Friday here in Australia. I do a lot of work on my book, actually, which is coming out on November 12th, 2019. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon, Becoming Eve. And I have to get ready. Shabbat is also starting in just a few hours, which I also have to get ready for. But thank you so much for having me. I think, Samantha, I think what you're doing is amazing. I think the show is amazing and important. And I'm looking forward to meet you when I'm in Phoenix.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Abby, really appreciate you working with us with being halfway across the world. This is great. I'm glad it worked out. Stay on the line for just a second here. I'm just going to talk really quickly about our next episode. After 10 weeks of new episodes, we actually are going to take next week off. So we'll try to sneak some new material, bonus material on the Instagram page while you wait. But we are going to return live with our next show on March 28th with our guest, Thomas Cole. And Thomas and I are going to be sharing our experiences coming out as transgender while being married. And we're going to talk about our journey as we've navigated transition and marriage together with our spouses. We're going to be answering your questions as we have always done. And I'm really looking forward to that episode. Don't forget to check out Thomas's Instagram page at Creating Thomas. Don't forget to check out Abby's Instagram page. Her Instagram handle has been up on the screen here tonight, and also her webpage. Abby has a great blog where she's put together a lot of her information since she's been out. And let's see, do you have that one, Addison? Maybe not.
No, I don't, sorry.
But okay, check out Abby's Instagram. You can find her page link from there, or Google her. She's got a Wikipedia page. I think that just about wraps us up. So we'll all come back on camera here really quick. This has been wonderful. Thanks again, Abby, so much. Enjoy the rest of your stay in Australia. Safe flight home. Addison, thank you for running the show from the control room there. Very excited about our week off next week. It's been kind of crazy with 10 weeks of episodes in a row, but we'll get right back to it with more great guests and more great stories to share. So from everyone here at Trans IRL, thanks for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.